Hello, my name is Bill Haley, and this is part of my Haley2024 The Movement's government reform ideas. So let's go over my ideas a little bit, and this one's going to be concentrating on better representation. The citizens need better representation than what we currently have right now, and how this whole system will give you that better representation. Hopefully you already looked at some of the other videos and know what we're talking about, but this is going to be a full review of the whole system, with a concentration on how we have better representation of every citizen. So let's get right into it. So, okay, congressmen and delegates, House of Delegates, state senators, US senators, they're not the best representatives, because what needs to be represented? People's ideas, people's interests, people's opinions, whether or not to go to war, whether to have higher or increased labor law, whether we should have better regulations on insurance companies, better police regulations and the like. Everybody has a very different idea about that. If you have one congressman representing 700,000 or 800,000 people, one House of Delegate member representing 100,000 people, a U.S. senator representing 40 or 50 million in California, or 500,000 in Alaska. I don't know if I got those numbers exactly right, but from a lot to a little, but there's still a lot. How do you represent all of California with one person? When you have libertarians, socialists, conservatives, liberals, Democrats, Republicans, middle of the roaders, whoever you have, what needs to be represented is the interest. And then, let's say you win on the election. Did you really win on all the issues? Maybe you liked him for his war policy, but not his welfare policy. Maybe you liked the House of Delegate member on his education policy, but really did not like him on the prison policy. What if you disliked both people who had a chance of winning, or maybe let's say only one person had a chance of winning? Did you really have a choice? Or let's say there's two people who had a chance of winning, but you like one person on 20% of the issues and another person on 30% of the issues. You still have to vote for one of the two, or let your vote go unneeded or unused. So, what are you going to do? You're not represented on 70% or 80%. So you make your choice. At least I get represented on 30% of my issues. What if you don't like any of them? What if the person who wins, even the one you vote for, you don't like at all on any of the issues? It's just the other person will take you further away from where you want to be. I feel that way a lot of times. My city council member, House of Delegate member, senator, state senator, US senator, congressman, president, governor, mayor, nobody has my ideas. I have a specific interest, that I have a very unique interest, and maybe I couldn't find a CRA that I'm going to talk about in a minute that would have all my interest, but allow me to have a lot closer interest and pick it per sector. So let's go right into it. But there's a lot to get into on just whether or not our congressmen and delegates should be considered representatives, because the most important thing to be represented is a person's interest, opinions, and the like. Winning the election does not mean that you got the person you want. They can represent everybody. It's just silly. You cannot do that. You will never go into a court with somebody who has 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, 800,000 clients. How can you represent each one? That's why in a court system, if there's 10 defendants, everyone can have its own lawyer. Every defendant can have their own lawyer if they wish. And a lot of times they do, because sometimes the one defendant will have to play off and try to accuse another defendant. And how is one lawyer going to represent both sides? He can't, not legitimately. Everybody needs their own representative. So let's get into how this system, the Haley2024 CRA structure, is going to do that. Okay. First of all, let's go back into that a little bit more. Bad or corrupt elected officials from your own party. Sometimes they're good on some of the issues, and the other party is so bad, whether you're a Democrat and you really don't want to get rid of a corrupt Democrat because the person taking their place might be a Republican, and then they go further away. So you keep somebody corrupt or bad in there. Hopefully maybe in a primary you can get somebody else. But for a couple years, and maybe even longer, you're going to have that corrupt person in there. There's a lot of examples of that. It's not the time to get into that, or this will be a very long video. Sometimes a congressman is very good at campaigning, but very bad at governing. Well, they're going to get elected because they're very good at campaigning. The people who are really good at governing, maybe they're nose to the grindstone, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, really learning everything they can about their one area of expertise. But they don't have time to campaign. So what's up with that? You get somebody who's not the best knowledgeable and not very knowledgeable about how to govern. They might know the best slogans to go with. They did some test groups. They know the best slogans to go with. They know what people want to hear, but they have no idea how to govern or what those slogans even mean to a large degree. They don't know how to go in depth. There's some that do know how to go in depth, but do they know how to go in depth on prison policy, labor law, police policy, foreign policy, insurance policy? There's a lot to know. I'm sure they don't know all of it. So anyway, so you see some of the problems. So now let's go over the CRA structure that's going to try to get better representation. First thing we do is split all government power into 30 sectors. I call them sectors. I talked about them. We're going to go over the sectors in a minute. But with distinct top-level elected representative leadership per sector. Wow, what if we had a full elected leadership just for labor law? Another full elected leadership just for insurance. Another one just for prison policy. Well, somebody with prison policy experience who's been in the system a lot, not an inmate, but as a guard, as a warden, been around the prisons and knows prisons frontwards and backwards, they'll probably run for elected office. Well, you might not want that person to deal with family law or insurance law or know how to deal with the police or know how to deal with foreign policy or the like, but they're really good at prisons. Well, are they going to get elected? What if you like them for one issue but not the other? We're going to go over it, but it's very important to know that we're going to have top level elected leadership, nobody above them, just concentrating on their sector alone. So this is going to make it a little bit more understandable here. No one person can serve let me read it exactly. No one person can serve in a position of official authority in more than one sector, in more than one level. So we have 30 sectors. More than one level means federal, state, or local. And federal has 30 sectors, state has 30 sectors, local has 30 sectors. So all three levels have 30 sectors. More than one branch. Every one of these is going to have executive, legislative, and judicial. So you have to take a position. If you have a position of official authority in one of these, you can only be in one sector, at one level of government, in one branch. And then, we haven't got to it yet, but we're going to have a separation from regulations and governance to the rating system. We'll get into the rating system. It's highly important. We'll get into it. But you got to be on the rating system side or the CRA side. Just as much governance from the rating system, legislative, executive, judicial. You got local, state, and federal. You have the still 30 sectors, so it's very much split up. So let's keep on going. Competitive regulatory agencies. Let's go to the next slide real quick. These are CRAs for competitive regulatory agencies. Each one of those words are very important. Competitive means there's going to be many of these. You get to pick which one. Regulatory, that's governance, that's regulations, that's a lot of different things. Agencies, so they're a unit. They're governed. They have bylaws. They are an organization. So very important for each one of those words. Okay, these are full governments. Like I said, executive, legislative, and judicial. They regulate, they govern, and they send representatives up to a representative level. We haven't got to that part yet, but let's get to it. Let's see, this is a hierarchy. I know it's hard to see on the screen. It's not meant to be seen on the screen right now, but you kind of see the thing. You can go to my website and you can see this more directly. I'm going to have some other graphics that's going to make it a little bit more understandable. But the parent sector board is the top, but they don't have much power. Their power is organizational and making sure every sector is staying within their sector. They decide when the insurance regulations stop and the financial regulations begin, where the family law stops and the charity begins. And by the way, we go to private sector military, private sector police, private sector, charity system versus welfare. We take everything into a free enterprise system, charity system, whatever, but it's not a government monopoly. Part of diverse representation, better representation, is not to have a monopoly over anything. So, or very, very few things. There's a few things that needs to go to a representative level. And you'll see here, every sector has a sector board. These are where the representatives come in. I already told you that CRAs, competitive regulatory agencies, will send representatives up to a representative body. That representative body is just for that one sector. They don't regulate underneath them unless there's a significant negative externality. There's a few things that need to be sent up there. I'll talk about a couple sectors where they have original authority at the representative sector board level. On the sector board level, on the rating system side, is called the rating system for that one sector. There's rating agencies underneath of them, roughly a dozen. Let's keep on going. So here are the 30 sectors. I'm going to go through them very rapidly. There's 5 in the charity system, 5 in the foreign protection system, 5 in the violent crime mitigation system. There's 15 more: healthcare, financial, insurance, food, education, manufacturing, human resources and sales, identity, environmental, work safety and disability, transportation, media and communications, and then water and land. I'm going to go over each one of those in a second. But you see how I split those up. Every CRA is the base, and an RA as well, but mostly the CRA is the base of where your governances come from. Everybody joins a CRA. You must join. Every business must join. Every organization must join. One in every sector at all 3 levels of government. You see how big this is, and you do a RA, rating agencies, and the CRAs split that up. You see how much representation you have by you joining. Your CRA represents you. They represent you at the representative level. Your RA represents you at the rating system level. But most things are going to be at the CRA level. You are governed by your CRA. My neighbor's governed by their CRA. Guy down the street's governed by another CRA. If there's a dozen, and you have a neighborhood of, let's say, 1,000, well, about 180, 50 to 100 people will be in my neighborhood will be in the CRAs together. Other ones will be in another. There'll be about a dozen CRAs. I'll get into why a dozen in a minute. Well, let me just go through it real quick. I don't think I have a slide on that. Minimum is 5%. If you get 5% of citizens together, it authorizes a governance. They have enough to represent you now. You don't want to go over 20% for monopolistic reasons. There's a good reasons to have a 20% and 5% limitations. So you should be able to find 5% of the people who agree with you enough to be governed together. And then you pick your CRA leadership. So important to understand that you pick your CRA leadership. Now let me go over the slide. So you have the sector. There's 30 of them at every level of government again. So this every sector has this at every level of government. Oh, by the way, some sectors are going to be so meaningless to some people or some organizations, but so meaningful to others. But you have to be involved in one of each for proper representation, for proper voting, and the like. But some will be totally meaningless to you to a large degree, and most of them will be somewhat, and then some will be greatly meaningful to you. Some will be meaningful at the federal level, but not so much at state or local. Other ones will be mostly meaningful at the state Other ones will be mostly meaningful at the local. So each sector is significantly different. And then if you're an insurance company, you're going to be very much meaningful to be what insurance regulator you want to govern you. If I'm an individual, I'm not really regulated by insurance governance because I don't run an insurance company. That's what I'm talking about. There's a lot of things like that. Every sector is different. Can't get into it right now, but let's keep on going. But every entity, person, organization, a business, any legal entity, a person has to be a head of a legal entity, by the way. A person has to be a head of an organization. A person has to be a citizen has to be a head of a business and the like. So, every legal entity headed by a person has to pick one of each. So, you pick your CRA. Like-minded people will come together. Libertarians, conservatives, liberals, Democrats, Republicans, Green Party. There's a lot of different ways to look at how do you want to be governed. We don't know how it's going to shake out. But all you need is 5% of the people to come together and have nice governance, and you elect their leadership. Again, full governmental units at all three levels: sector board level, parent sector board level, and the CRA itself. Complete governance: executive, legislative, judicial. So you see how much representation is split and how much you pick. But you are electing these people. So I think I already talked about this. All government power is separated into 30 sectors with distinct leadership per sector. And here, let's go over the 30 real quick. Charities are going to do the charity. They do the assisting. The Charitable Distribution Association, they're going to be doing the funding mechanism. Everybody has to give 5%, which means every business has to give 5%. Target is $1 trillion or 5% of GDP going toward the charity system. The charity assessor organizations, we're going to call them AOs, they're the case managers. We've got family law and religion. So everybody picks what family law regulatory agency they want to govern them. Now religion never governs anybody. They're there for organizational purposes. They're there for fighting for religious liberty. But imagine the interesting things you can do with family law. Everybody's currently fighting over the monopoly family law within their state. And they always have battles in their legislative sessions about what the family law should be. Well, you pick the one you want. You have a dozen different ones. From very conservative to middle of the road to more liberal to whatever you want. If Catholics want to get together and have a Catholic family law, let them do it. If Protestants want to get together and do it, let them do it. People have to choose which ones they want to go into. If you want a secular one, you can do that. There's a lot of different options. So you see the representation. Now, most of the representation, it doesn't go as a representative body to represent everybody. You get governed by the representative body that you want to be governed by. And only when there's significant negative externalities does it go up to a representatives that do everybody. And that's not going to be much. And most of that's going to be done through the CRA anyway, with a couple mandates. The rating system is going to be able to put some rating floors where you cannot go below a certain level of infringing on other people's rights. Again, there's a lot to get into on that. So let's go on. Foreign protection system. This is at the federal level. Very little will go to the state or the local. Maybe some. We'll see. But the primary authority is at the federal level for these. The other 25 sectors, primary authority is at the state. The state can send a little bit up to the federal level. The states will send a lot down to the local level depending on the sector. But these are the federal levels. This deals with foreign policy. The diplomats, commander-in-chief is a totally different sector. They're their full officer corps with the top leader. Like the President of the United States is the top leader for the commander-in-chief. Well, I separate the top leader for the commander-in-chief. It's a different person than the top leader, the foreign diplomat. Different people. Military corporation, significantly into the free enterprise system. So you got major representation there. And because you're going to be a lot of publicly traded corporations dealing with this. There's a mandates that some of these will be publicly traded corporations. A lot to get into that. Military capability system is a funding mechanism. They get 5%, roughly $1 trillion, from the states, and the states get it from their sales tax. And there's other little bit of variety in there. I'm not going to get into how they do it right now, but they have to get some taxes. We still do taxes. It's a good time to tell you that we go from about 38% of GDP, federal, state, and local, of government spending. So government spending right now is about 38% of GDP at all three levels of government. We're going to go down to about 5 to 10, depending on how you look at it. There's a mandate that you give 5% to charities. Well, we get rid of all welfare, and that replaces that. So, is that a tax? Well, it's never going to government. It's going to private, competitive, charitable distribution associations. So it never touches the government hand, but it's still a mandate. So it's a tax, but it's not going to government. But it's a mandate because it's a citizen's responsibility. Anyway, that's the system. Okay, the Military Authorization Agency, that's a checks and balance issue. That's major representation, and that's going to be able to authorize people to use military power. But the commander-in-chief still uses military power authorized by the diplomats, and with a separate system as additional representative and additional checks and balances. Read over those articles. It's very interesting. Okay. The violent crime mitigation system. One describing the violent crime, one doing law enforcement, one authorizing anybody with inherent government power in this system, police officer, DAs, judges, and the like, prison guards, and the like. We go to a full private court system. A lot of good representation there. Prison and corrections, all private. Good representation. A lot of checks and balances. There's a good way of making this a lot better than what we currently have. A lot better court system, a lot better prison system, a lot better law enforcement system when we get into the free enterprise system. Socialism never works as good as a free enterprise system. But the free enterprise system, in some areas, such as this, will need high rating floors. They can't just have a free-for-all. They need to be authorized. They need to meet standards. They need to respect civil liberties. There's a lot of rules and mandates around it, but not so much that you don't have the benefits of the free enterprise system. The rules and mandates around it is basically you cannot have negative externalities or extreme negative externalities. That's where the rating floors comes in. There's a lot to get into. Hopefully you can look at that one. But this video is supposed to be strictly on showing how representation is enhanced. So each one is important. Now, healthcare regulations is huge. We have a lot of healthcare regulations. Which is the best? Well, when I have a competition in it. CRAs are going to have the primary. You're not going to move too much to the representative sector board level. You split that into two different sectors because it's so big. Healthcare is huge. So is financial, banking and non-banking, both huge. Very interesting monetary policy. A lot of representation there. You are governed by who you want to be governed by. That's increased representation. Insurance regulations, food regulations, education. We get rid of the public school system pretty much entirely. If you want to stay with the public school system, you can, but it's just going to be a self-contained benefits and taxes from their members. So we're not going to totally get rid of the public school system, but as we know it now, yes, people are going to go to the free enterprise system because people want that. It's the reason people, or 85% of the people are in the public school system now, is because they offer you the money. I mean, they take money away from you, regardless of whether you use it, then offer to pay for your children's education. We get rid of that. Everybody's going to go into the sector, CRA, that they want, and then get regulated by your school board, if you want to call it that. If you want to go very libertarian, go very private sector, you get taxed $1 for some little bit of oversight, and you go to private sector, and there's no taxes involved pretty much. Manufacturing, human resources, and sales. Well, manufacturing is just manufacturing. We just want a regulation. It's going to be a little bit of a catch-all sector, but dealing with some regulations regarding that. Not a lot of thought pattern on that because they'll do that. Plus, I don't make the regulations. This is the structure that I'm proposing. And then they make the regulations. People come together and make the regulations they want. Human resources and sales, that's labor law. It deals with income taxes. That deals with sales taxes. Income taxes would be to help fund the police and the prisons because we're doing police contracts and the like. That's how the police get funded, is the police contracts. Everybody must do it. There'll be competitive police companies out there. They must meet a lot of high standards. They must organize. They must work together. There's a lot to it. Already went past that page, but there's a lot to that. Look at that video. Okay, but that's great for sales tax as well, the human resources and sales sector. Identity, that deals with citizenship and personal and business. Citizenship and ownership. So it's a lot put into that sector, a lot of heavy responsibility given to that sector, and very interesting. Environmental regulations, work safety regulations, transportation. We get rid of all government-owned roads. We go to private sector roads. Most roads will be required to be publicly traded corporations. We have a funding mechanism through transponders. It's on that website. On my website, I have some videos out there on it, but keep on looking around for that. Media and communication, that's going to be more of a catch-all as well, because we don't regulate media. They have First Amendment rights, freedom of press and stuff. It's there to regulate different things like the FCC and the like, but with competitive nature, it only things going up to the representative sector board level when it has extreme negative externalities or large negative externalities. It doesn't have to be super extreme. But the rating system is going to solve that problem before you even need rating floors to the most part. Land and water deals with zoning and the like. There's a lot to get into on that. So just imagine we take all the current governments, whether you're a local government, a town, a big city like New York, or a local small little town of 5,000 people, a state of Alaska or the big state of California, the federal government. You take every one of those, executive, legislative, and judicial, and multiply it by 30. You don't increase the power, you split that power up. All the education power goes to this one sector. All the labor law goes to that sector. All the police power goes to this sector. So split up all that power. Now you concentrate. Voters concentrate on who they want to go with, what the policies are. And the representatives get to focus like a laser beam on just their sector. I'm focusing just on prisons. I don't care about labor law. I don't care about foreign policy. I don't care about all of this. My 14-hour-a-day job is to focus on prison policy and making that the best it can be. And then when you have CRAs, you have 12 different prison CRAs. They're going to be each one competing with the other ones to see who can do the best job on all the things that you want a prison to do. I have a whole video and a page to describe what do you want a prison to do? What's the rating system in a prison going to say? Are you going to look for all the things that you want? Low recidivism rates? Are you going to look at getting people into the workforce? Are you going to look for long-term success of that person? Are you going to look at restitution for the victim? What are you going to look at? Maybe all of them. Okay. So important to understand, again, federal, state, and local, every current government will have this complete structure. And again, local government might have a little bit of power in some sectors and a lot of power in another sector. State, local, federal, every sector is different. Okay, we're going to transition away from government monopoly to societal oversight. Now, obviously, government currently has societal oversight. But societal oversight is one of the functions of government. You can do societal oversight without the government monopoly. So what are some of my societal oversights? The police authorization, law enforcement authorization sector. Representatives that gives people the ability to be a judge, a police officer, a sheriff, DA, and the like. In the federal government, another societal oversight role is you have 4 or 5 significant representative bodies that will check any abuse of power in the military. Right now, we shouldn't want just the one president to have so much power with a 2/3 majority to get rid of him in an impeachment if he starts abusing that military power. We want many different representative agencies that can take action. Anyway, so a lot more societal oversight than we currently have in government, but without the government monopoly and government control. So it's almost strange. You get better societal oversight within this system, but without so much government control. Only when somebody's doing some significant major negative externalities. Okay, original authority at the state and federal. Let's go to this one. I said it before, but it's a good time to repeat it. 25 of these will have original authority at the state level. The 5 in the foreign protection system will have original authority at the federal level. What original authority means is they get to say how much goes down to the local or the state gets to say how much goes down to the local and how much goes up to the federal. They get that decision. Now all the states going to have to get together and send the same amount of power up to the federal level, and then each state can decide within their state how much power they want to send down to the state level. A lot to get into on that. Okay, diversified representation. So it increases by a lot true representation because you are picking the people that you win your vote every single time when you select a governing agency. When you select a CRA, you win your vote because you go into that CRA. Your neighbor wins his vote when he selects. Currently, I go vote, my neighbor goes votes, whoever gets the most votes wins. I might lose the person who I want to win, and my neighbor might win. One's represented, one's not represented. And again, like I said, maybe he's only represented by the person he wanted by 30% of the time. He just didn't want to lose it 90% of the time. Anyway, so true representation. And when you split it up 30 ways and you pick, how many times have you heard that somebody is socially liberal but within the financial sector, or within the financial system, they want to be more conservative? A lot. Well, regardless of whether that's true or not, there's a lot of people who have different ideas about education policy and military policy and welfare policy. You get to pick you get to pick your representatives per sector. So it's very important. So 30 sectors, that's 2 representative bodies per sector, rating system and the CRAs. You got the federal, state, and local. That is roughly a dozen CRAs per sector, which means you pick 180, 30 for the local, 30 for the state, 30 for the federal on the CRA side, 30 for the federal, 30 for the state, 30 for the local on the RA side. That's 180 choices. You're going to have choices of roughly 2,000 to 3,000, somewhere around there, because it's roughly 12 per sector. So there's a lot of choices out there. You get to pick your choice between each one within each sector, at each level. Now, is that going to be difficult? You can initially say, yeah, that's horrible. I don't want to have that many choices. The Conservative Heritage Foundation is going to group them all together. Republican Party is going to group together. The Brookings Institute, a more liberal think tank, is going to group CRAs together. The Democrats Party is going to group things together. The Libertarians will group CRAs together. The Green Party will group groups together. Middle of the Roaders will group some CRAs together. People who are Catholic might group together. People who are Protestants might group together. Jewish people might group together. We don't know until we try. We don't know until it starts happening. People can, you might just say, I want all of Heritage Foundation, or you can, I want all of Democrats. You can do it, and then slowly but surely start reading and picking different CRAs to match more of your views in one aspect or another. Okay, switching representation from electing individuals to selecting governing agencies. So within the governing agencies, within the CRAs, you pick individuals. And you pick representatives. You elect representatives out of your CRA to move up to the sector board level or the parent sector board level. You pick representatives out of your RA that you do. Only the people within your organization, only people within your RA, or only people within your CRA, only those members pick the leadership, executive, legislative, and judicial, and send representatives up to the upper level. So you still pick individuals, but you do it after you select your governing agency, after you select your RA, after you select your CRA. Okay, so there's no November election. No first Tuesday in November every 4 years for president. No every 2 years for congressmen. No delegates, no state senators. We get rid of all that. Now, they might have regular elections within your CRA. It might be at will. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Somebody might have a 10-year term. Somebody might have a 1-year term. Somebody might have a 4-year term. Other ones are going to be at will. There's a lot of ways to do it. Every CRA can make their own decisions on how the length of their representatives and the like. So, went over that enough. Okay, changing CRAs at will. If you want to change your CRA because somebody's getting ready to go to war and they're getting ready to decide on war, and your CRA says, I'm for war, and my representative is going to vote for war, and you really don't want to, you can jump to another CRA if you want to. You can jump, and then that's going to give you a lot of decisions. And every jump from one CRA to another is going to make a difference in the representation. It will immediately say you have 11%, now you have 10.999%. Everyone will change the notch it down. I don't care how far out the decimal points have to go. Everyone changing will change that percentage. So you send representatives up with a percentage of your proportional to your membership. So if you have 8% memberships of all the citizens in your CRA deciding whether we're to go to war or not, you get 8%. The representatives you send up there go up there with 8% representation, proportional voting. So one person might go up there, let's say it's Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders going up to vote. Ted Cruz represents, let's say, 6%. Bernie Sanders represents 5%. Well, Bernie Sanders, when he casts his vote, he casts 5%. Ted Cruz, 6%. If I got those numbers right. Anyway, or they might send 10 representatives, each with 0.5% of representation each. They get to decide that. Let's see. CRA is going to have a better track record than individuals. How many times have you went to a political website, a candidate's website, and you got a good readout of what their issues are? It's usually a couple paragraphs at the most on a few issues, saying basically nothing. It doesn't say much. It's a couple sound bites to make it sound decent, but you really don't get a good record. And then how often do they not even do what they had on their website? Do what their campaign promises were? Well, a lot. Well, CRA is going to have a very good track record. They're going to build one over time. And you're going to be able to go to there with a good understanding and reliability that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. They're going to have a record. If they don't do what they said they're going to do, well, the members are going to bolt and go somewhere else where they're going to be more reliable, or they're going to vote you out real quick and replace you as leader of their CRA, as a representative of your CRA. So let's keep on going. I'm almost done here. A couple more slides here. Indian elections as we know it, it reduces animosity. How many people are just so anxious and show animus towards Trump or how many Republicans show animus towards Obama? How many people show animus between all these groups? That's going to get rid of it because we're going to have so many, we're going to have people governing their own members. So, why people will change their CRAs? They change their mind. You see results from one CRA showing good results, another CRA showing poor results. Their rating system is going to give you high quality information from a lot of perspectives, and people are going to start changing their mind when they have people, when they have the organization actually having results of their policies being implemented. Okay, any time of the year changes. You can change at will. Now, there are a few CRAs that might have some time contracts, family law and some insurance law, the life of your loan or whatever. It has to keep under that same CRA. There'll be some, but to the most part, you can change at will. So, vote. Okay, let's see. 70% vote to move to representative control. I never even got to this yet. To get up to the next level, to representative level, first of all, the RA is going to have to say, vote to do that. There's going to have to include a negative externality. The court system's going to have to say, this had a major negative externality. And then the CRA is going to have to make regulations that are the rating system said they can make. It's a lot to get to a representative thing, a representative decision to control everybody in that area. So there's a lot to do it. We don't make it easy. We don't want things at a representative level that control everybody. We want only CRAs to be controlling. Okay. Corporate proxy groups represents your interest as a stockholder. Very interesting idea. So you own stocks in a publicly traded corporation. Right now, you have no idea who to vote for to be the chairman, to be the board members, board of directors and the like. You have no clue. You don't have an interest in seeing who it is either because you only own a couple $100 of stocks in this, in a big old mutual fund. You own 100 different companies. You will turn your proxies over to corporate proxy groups where they can, that you agree with, that has your philosophy of how to run a company. Then they'll be able to group all the proxies together and have real influence on who they're going to vote for in a board of directors and the CEO and the CFO and stuff. So it's a really interesting idea. Look at that video or that page. Okay, 5 more videos here. Vote within your, or 5 more slides here. Vote within your CRA and RAs. So important to know that so people at another CRA, they don't come in and affect my vote. Only the members of a CRA vote. These are the ones that are going to be primary authority at the representative level. The diplomats, the commander-in-chief. You cannot have different commander-in-chiefs per sector. They're going to be involved. The CRA is going to be very much involved in putting people up to be diplomats, putting the officer corps together. That's where that's going to come out of the CIC sector, the commander-in-chief sector. But you have to have one president for the top diplomat, another person, but a top commander-in-chief. The military authorization agency, different philosophy of how you want represented on that aspect to authorize that power. The violent crime, the definition of violent crime, that has to be all together. You cannot have one CRA saying a violent crime is this and another CRA saying a violent crime is that. You can have insurance policy, you can have insurance regulations and laws saying this within the CRA, and then somebody else says there's a CRA over here, and we're going to have different rules. But you can't do that for violent crime because violent crime has to be consistent. Then law enforcement authorization. So the military authorization and the law enforcement authorization, 2 different ones because they have 2 different responsibilities, one for military, one for law enforcement, the courts, and the prisons. So those have significant representative control. Well, original authority representative control for these sectors. These are mostly needs high rating floors. Rating floors is this, you cannot go below this rating. I go 1 through 100 on my ratings, 100 being the best, 0 being the worst. But if you go below, let's say a 30, you can't do that. you can't operate as a CRA unless you get your rating above a 30 or a 40, whatever the rating floor is. We don't want out of control law enforcement, out of control military, out of control judicial, the court system and the like. Civil liberty is going to have a high rating floor. There's ways to get it real high. The prison and corrections, a high rating floor. Human resources dealing with taxes, so you need high integrity there. Identity deals with citizenship and ownership, high integrity, so we need high ratings on that. Environmental ratings, yes, obviously you need some good rating floor so people don't pollute when they're not supposed to. There's a lot to get into on that. The rating system is going to make their environmental laws so much better. Okay, the freedom of about a dozen CRAs and a dozen full systems systems to experiment will yield great results. So this is where I end all my videos. The freedom of about a dozen CRAs, a dozen per sector, and a dozen full systems, 30 different sectors, to experiment, competition, free enterprise, will yield great results. It's the monopoly that's holding us back now. So, just a quick reminder that if you want to pause here for a minute and just read this, go to my website at Haley2024.org. Please consider a donation. And until the next video,